Every presentation at PSU MacAdmins now has to start with. Obviously, you'll start your presentation with a joke. There's a tip for you future presenters. Start with a good joke. My name is Damien Barrett. I work at Corning Incorporated, a really large glass company. There's a lot of Corning technology in your pockets, in the walls, fiber optic cabling, and so forth. I've been there for about 4 years. And then before that job, I was in education for a really long time, working with high schoolers, running the tech department at a private school. And before that, I was in New York City as an Apple certified trainer and a consultant. I have lots of really great stories from the old days of Mac support, back when everybody that used a Mac was super eccentric. So if you ever see me at a conference, ask me some stories. I'll tell you some great stories about some celebrities and some of the really crazy, unusual people that lived in and around Manhattan around the turn of the century.
And my name is Robert Hammen. I am principal Mac consultant at SAP, which is a tiny little software company based out of Germany. Just a couple of enterprises, like 94% of the Fortune 500 uses SAP. I've been there about 7 months. Prior to that, I spent 5 years being the Apple guy at SpaceX. I managed all the Apple devices there, including sending 58 iPads to orbit with astronauts and cosmonauts. Before that, I worked at NIH as a contractor for several years, and I too was also a consultant for about 10 years.
So suffice it to say, we have a lot of experience in the MacAdmin community, and we've seen a lot and experienced a lot. And we thought, let's put together a presentation where we talk about all of the problems that we've encountered and ways in which we've discovered and determined to get around some of those problems. You're juggling 100 plates, and you've got flaming chainsaws coming at you. How do you not go crazy? I mean, you can lose all your hair, right?
Yeah, that's
right.
You might need a knee replaced or two.
But catch on fire, right?
Yeah.
So that's what this presentation's about.
Yeah, and this is not a technical presentation. It's more of a soft skills and how do you deal with your career and how do you deal with stress and what are the various factors. So
let's get the legal thing out of the way.
Right.
The views expressed in this presentation are those of the presenters and do not reflect the views of their employers. So while I may talk a little bit about Corning Incorporated, he may talk a little bit about SAP and SpaceX, we are not representing our companies right now. Workplace issues. When you first start in the MacAdmin community, you might be a little overwhelmed. Like, what on earth did I get myself into? Do I really want to spend all of this time trying to figure out how to navigate this rather unusual and complicated environment? What kind of stressors exist? I mean, I talked a little bit about it already. You have a crazy amount of responsibilities, and you have to juggle all of it.
Yeah, it's very frustrating when you are, you have to be both the answer man, so everybody comes to you for how do I, and then you also have to do project work like deploy something new, and you've the constant struggle between, the interruptible tasks and the long-term project tasks.
I am the only Mac admin at Corning, and so I'm operating as an architect, an engineer, service desk, trainer, documentator, Apple Vision Pro guy, iPad fleet manager, Mac fleet manager. It's a lot, and that's a lot of stress. And we're going to talk about some techniques later on about how do you actually not go crazy? How do you manage all of that stress? This is early in your career. It's imposter syndrome. What if I don't know what to do? Am I really an expert in this?
It's not necessarily just early in your career. I mean, when I was first at SpaceX, I felt that same way. It's like there's a lot of really, really, really smart people here. And I don't feel like I'm in their league.
The ways you can deal with imposter syndrome is fake it till you make it. Seriously, fake it till you make it. If you can project an aura of confidence, everything else will follow, unless you completely mess up. But that's another whole slide. Fake it till you make it, and then usually the success will follow.
Yeah, and it's You can't just fake it. You have to understand where your areas, what are the things that I don't know? Like, geez, I don't know Azure DevOps. I guess I should learn how to use it and spend some more time digging into it because the company may use that, for example.
Don't underestimate the possibility of using a mentor. Finding a mentor in the MacAdmin community that you trust and can rely on, and set up a regular meeting with them. And if they're willing to do it, you might find a therapist you can talk to, and expose all of your fears to them, and let them work with you on building up your confidence a little bit.
Arrival fallacy. Okay, I've got this job. This is great. I'm great. Or I don't need to keep learning. Try it again. An expression that I often say is, if you don't like to learn new things all the time, and you're in the, admin engineering community space, you're in the wrong profession, because you'll be learning until the day that you die or retire, whichever comes first. And again, you want to keep, don't get arrogant just because you've arrived. And a lot of times, this can also go to, well, if I just get power through this one project, then I'll be much better. It doesn't work that way, because the next project comes along, so you're always on the wheel. You're always Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill.
What do you do if you're asked to do something that's not in your job responsibility? This happens a lot. You'd be surprised. What do you do? I usually go to management. Like, this is not my job responsibility. Do you really want me focused on this? It's your manager's job to help you determine which things need priority, and which things are your responsibility and which things aren't. So don't be afraid to use your manager. That's why they exist. Well, one of the reasons they exist.
Now, there may be an exception to that if you're at the office late, or you're online in the evening and somebody asks you to do something really quick and your manager isn't going to be able to respond. It depends on how involved that project is. I may knock it out, but I will also, message my manager, said, hey, so-and-so asked me for help on this, but it was kind of an emergency, so I did it. And I will also ask the person to send my manager a note saying that it is. You got to kind of cover yourself a little bit.
Mm-hmm. There's a phrase we use in corporate speak called CYA, cover your, right? Do it. Have a paper trail. Use email. Use a notebook.
Yeah, take notes. Yep. When you're asked to do things that are not part of your responsibilities or your daily plan, make sure you document that, because otherwise you'll get people coming at you. Or the organization.
Yeah, or HR might find that as a way to make you part of a RIF, reduction in force.
Now, one caveat I want to say: if they're asking you to do something in your responsibilities that may skirt legality, that is a hard no.
Yeah. And speaking of ethics and legality, that's actually I think that's the next slide. No, a little bit further. Most big corporations have an anonymous ethics tip line. And don't be afraid to use it. They are usually, almost every time I've heard of it, they are truly anonymous. It's there to protect you and the company from litigation. I'll let you do this one.
The salary too low one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what happens if you took a new job? Maybe you move to a new geographic area and you get there and you realize that I'm not making enough money. And that, I'm kind of, paying the rent and I got $10 left in my checking or savings account. What things can you do? So there are all kinds of options. If most of the time you're limited by your organization that you can't do consulting or contract work, but if you do something personally for people, I know some people that have supplemented their IT careers by doing DoorDash, for example, or Uber, Lyft. You have to have a budget, I think, is the most important thing. And ideally, if you can be in a situation where you have I have been in both of these situations. I have been in a situation where I've ended up with $10 left in my bank account for one reason or another. Car breakdown, car accident, whatever. And the more, I don't want to go kind of Dave Ramsey on you here, but if you should have like an emergency fund, even just $1,000 to start. You can add on to it later. And if you have to use it for something, then, cut your budget, assess everything you're doing to try to reduce your monthly expenditures. Get a roommate if you have a house or something like that. But have that budget. And I can tell you, again, from having gone through this before, my stress level was much more elevated when I had $10 in the bank than when I had $1,000 or $5,000 in there for case of emergencies. I personally now try to keep, since I'm now a new homeowner again, I try to keep like 3 to 6 months of cash sort of liquid that I can get at it if I need to, if something comes up. And then it's just like, oh, well, I got to put a transmission in the car. Okay, $3,000, it's fixed, no big deal. I just got to cut my budget a little bit, don't go out to eat, whatever, for a few months to rebuild that back up.
So what do you do if you don't know what the actual salary for your position should be? So there is a Google document that's generated about every year in the MacAdmin community where people voluntarily list their salaries and their job title and their location. I think it's called a salary survey. If you search for that in the MacAdmin community, you'll find the Google Doc. You'll refer to it, and you do some comparison and contrast against your own salary. Maybe help you determine whether you're underpaid or not.
And Glassdoor can also help. Sometimes it's not accurate, sometimes it is.
We were talking about the ethics of the job. I'll just repeat it. Don't be afraid to use the ethics hotline. That's why they exist. It's there to protect you and the company. I've had times when I've had to use my own moral code to determine whether I did something immoral or not. I've been doing this a really long time. Went all the way back into the 90s and early 2000s when there was no security on anything. Us old timers know this. Things didn't even have passwords. You could boot up a computer with no password on it. And I saw things that I could have taken advantage of. I saw celebrities' bank account information. I saw information that I was working with celebrities and I could have used that information illicitly to make a profit. But I chose not to because I'm an ethical person. So most of us have a pretty good ethical moral code. Recommend you try to follow it whenever possible.
Yeah, listen to your conscience. If being asked to do something bothers you, and it's questionable on either legally or ethically, it's a good time to say no.
It's true. I know not everyone is good at their job. So what do you do? Oh my God, I have this new guy working with me. This is not real, this is hypothetical. Oh my God, I have this new guy or a new woman working with me. And they do not know what they're doing. And I feel like I have to constantly pick up their work. What do you do? My answer is you go back to management.
Yep.
You document as much as you can, go back to management. That is a management problem to solve, not a you problem to solve.
Yeah, about all you can do is talk to your manager, be factual, not emotional, even if the person not doing their job, impacts you and you're frustrated with it. Because I've been in that situation also. But try to be as black and white with documenting it, and just keep documenting every time something happens like this. Like, oh, okay, so and so, requested a loaner computer for this person. The person didn't set it up and called in sick, and all of a sudden the person showed up to pick it up, and nobody had any knowledge because there's no ticket created and nothing. So I just keep documenting that, in a spreadsheet every time this happened. And I would take care of, I'd drop what I was doing and take care of it, but it was frustrating for me. And, eventually they ended up doing something about it. But it took like a year or a year and a half.
So up until this point, everything we've talked about has been like in work, right? Work stuff, issues at work. What about all that stuff that's outside of work? Those are stressors too. And we'll talk both a little bit about our own personal experiences and our own life journeys, and how we've had to manage and navigate some pretty difficult situations. I'm going to say, though, that the first thing you have to keep in mind at all times is you just never know what another person is going through. You just can't know. You don't know what their personal life is like. You don't know what kind of stressors they have outside of work. And so the answer is just be kind. Just be kind. Every religion in the world, and I mean every religion in the world, has a golden rule. Treat others as you'd like to be treated. Be kind, use kindness. It'll come back to you in spades later on. But just remember also that, that person was really short with me and angry at me. They might be dealing with something that's entirely outside of work. And that stress is causing them to behave that way.
Yeah, I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt in those situations. The exception is when they're doing this all the time. Somebody may demand something from me, and I will try to be kind, and if I can do it and help them without disrupting my own thing, I will help them. But if this becomes a pattern, at some point I will bring it to my manager and say, is something going on with so-and-so? Because they're always short with me and I don't get it.
And then it may become an HR issue.
Right.
So,
But usually that's like 10% of the time that's a problem. 90% of the time it's a transient thing. And once you come through for somebody, sure, they're going to come back to you and ask you for stuff, but they're going to treat you better because you treated them better and you helped them. It's when they don't, that's when it's a problem.
all right. Show of hands, who's had to move while they're working or changing jobs, relocating? All right. It is perhaps one of the most stressful things you can ever do. Like you're trying to sell a house, you're trying to buy a house, you're trying to learn your new location, it is crazy stressful. And so when I recognize I work at Corning and when I recognize that new people are moving into our space, into our area, I try to like lend a hand, like, hey, can I share with you all of the local resources that I've learned about? I have a new neighbor who moved in across the street. He runs our microscopy lab. And he moved up here from Tennessee. And I went over, knocked on his door. I said, hey, I'm Damien. And I'm Blake. And I said, I've got a list of contractors for you. Like, need a new roof? I got a guy. Need a plumber? Got a guy. And it formed this really great friendship because I went out of my way to make him feel welcome to the community and gave him some of those local resources that otherwise he'd have to struggle to find. And he's told me that it actually helped him kind of get a foot going at his work as well.
Yeah, I just went through this myself in December because I was living in Southern California working at SpaceX, and then I relocated to Phoenix in February and bought a house in February. So I moved twice. I changed jobs, and moved twice in about a 3-month period. No stress whatsoever, right?
Yep.
Where is my stuff?
Robert's talked about this a little bit. We all have to deal with it. And I don't think any of us in here are independently wealthy, right? Except maybe Adam in the back. It's a stress, right? I have it. We all have it. Try to have a slush fund, or not slush fund. Try to have an emergency fund. Not a slush fund. That was a misspeak. Try to have an emergency fund because you just don't know, right? New transmission, health issue, medical bill,
Job loss of a partner.
Yeah. Oh, my wife comes to you. I'm pregnant. Oh, wow. Okay. Right. All right. This might get a little serious. I'm sorry. I apologize. But I'm a pretty open person. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I've shared this with a number of people in the past. My first wife passed away 11 years ago from cancer. I was left with a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old as a suddenly single parent. And it was probably the most stressful period of my life ever. It was a horror show. It was really bad. But I was working at a really great school with a really great support system, and I leaned on them, and it helped me out tremendously. But it didn't mean that it was less stressful. I had to navigate that. Robert had to navigate a very similar situation.
Yeah, my first wife developed early onset dementia. I very much remember being at a client, as a consulting client, and she called me, and I answered the phone, and she was screaming at me because she was completely afraid because she had driven somewhere and she was lost and she didn't know where she was going. Like when she first called and was screaming at me, I thought like possibly something happened to her mother or something like that. There was a death. I had to I'm in a client office and she's screaming at me on my cell phone at the time, my iPhone at the time, and I'm like, oh, just a minute. I had to run outside and talk her off the ledge and try to figure out where she was and how to get her home. Do you think that I was good for doing any work that day until I knew that she was home? No. So, I had to make a very difficult decision because we didn't have any kids, and her mother also had developed dementia. So apparently this is genetic. That I could, I realized the only person I could save was myself, and I couldn't, there's no way that I could not work and take care of her. So I ended up having to leave my marriage. She ended up passing away in 2018. But yeah, it's very challenging. I tried very hard not to let that affect me, but I know that it did.
I was working at a school, and I was presenting to Apple all of the work that we had been doing to become an Apple Distinguished School. It was a big deal, big presentation. And in the middle of that presentation, I get a text from my wife telling me that she has stage 4 cancer. And I was like, I gotta go. I'm sorry, I gotta go in the middle of the presentation. Now, I explained later on to my boss what was going on, and it wasn't a problem, but I'll never forget, right? I'm literally in the middle of a presentation. Be like if I'm up here talking now, and I got a text from my wife saying, oh, your son was just in a car accident, or something like that. You put yourself first, your job comes second. I focused on myself and my kids. I was fortunate, very, very fortunate, that I had a workplace, a school that was understanding. I feel very fortunate for that. Let's go back and reflect what the very first thing I told you guys. You never know what another person is going through. So respond with kindness. It'll come back to you in spades. Health issues. We joke around about it, but I've had both of my knees replaced, right?
I need one replaced.
It's a health issue. I ended up not being able to take enough time off of work to do it, so I just worked through it, right? I was presenting last year with a cane in my hand, right? You just don't know. Heart attack, stroke.
I was at work one day when I was at SpaceX in 2020, and I got a call from my wife, and I'm remarried, and she's like, I need you to come home now and take care of the dogs because I slipped in the backyard and broke my leg, and the ambulance is here, and they're taking me away now. So it's like, okay, sorry, peace out.
Yep. I kind of joked about this, birth of a child, right? I didn't know my second child was coming. It wasn't planned. It's like, surprise, right? And we had to plan for it. We had to plan around it. And that was a very stressful, very, very stressful financial time at that time. I don't know. Nobody knows, right? Economic conditions are wild, right? The job market right now is among the worst I've seen in many, many years. And I don't know if it's going to get better. Nobody knows what's going on with tariffs. I don't know if that's going to impact your company or not. I don't even know if it'll impact my company. So how do you navigate that? How do you deal with that? Sometimes you just can't. Sometimes you're like, you know what? I'm just going to keep doing my job and not worry about it. I'll let you do this one.
Natural disasters, floods, rain, things that may take out, that may prevent you from going to work. COVID. Look at COVID. I finally got moved to Southern California, and I moved, and I'm full-time in February of 2020, and what happened in March? And so I've started a new job. I'm still trying to find my way around, and suddenly no one is around. I'm in the office, and everybody's remote. So it's like, that was challenging. Or again, a natural disaster like a hurricane that wipes out a data center or something like that, or just like people in your company who can't work. Or when I was at SpaceX, when Russia invaded Ukraine, and all of a sudden a bunch of my coworkers are flying to Poland, and need help setting up Starlink dishes to go to Ukraine and things like that. So,
on the morning of 9/11, I was working in Manhattan. I'd woken up late. I'd overslept, and I never oversleep, ever. I'm punctual. And I overslept. I was late for a meeting. Now, I would have been fine. I was not going into the World Trade Center. But I would have been coming out of the World Trade Center subway stop to go to a meeting on Chambers Street at the time the second plane hit the second tower. I ended up not going to Manhattan that day, so I avoided the mass exodus across the bridge, but that impacted my work because I suddenly couldn't go into Manhattan, couldn't go below 14th Street for 3 weeks. I did end up down there. Had to pull some servers out of a building in Wall Street about 3 days after 9/11. We got special permission to go down there and pull the servers and move them uptown. But that's not a natural disaster, but it is something that we all had to deal with. All right, so everything we've talked about, lots of stress, right? Work stress, life stress, issues sometimes you can't control. What do you do about all this? Well, Robert and I have developed a number of, or have discovered, we didn't develop them, discovered a number of techniques and tips over the years that we'd like to share with you. If you haven't read these books, I recommend it, especially if you're going into a management role or if you're adjacent to a management role. There's a book called The Phoenix Project, and it is a piece of fiction, but it rings really true, about a manager who has to kind of turn around a parts supply company. And you'll recognize a lot of the engineers that are described in this book because they're around you.
They are us.
So, they are us. Great book. It was written about 10 years ago, so it's still relatively recent. It's not like Xerox in 1965 or anything. And then there's a sequel, which I'll admit I have not read yet, but there's a sequel called The Unicorn Project, which is on my list. I'll get to it.
And then there's a book about atomic habits, and the old expression, we are creatures of habit, is true. But what this book specifically covers is talking about building habits or creating habits. And it's just simple things. Like, I will, when I get up, when I first sit in front of my computer for the first time that day, before I look at email or Teams or Slack or whatever, I'm going to think about the 3 things I want to get accomplished today and document them. And then I will go through and maybe change that list based on what happened in my emails and stuff overnight, especially when you work for an international company where everybody started 7 hours before you did. But then, and it's just, it can be, it doesn't necessarily have to be work related. It could be personal related. Like, okay, I will get up in the morning and I'll load the dishwasher and run it during the day if I didn't do it at night. Or do laundry on these days or take the garbage out. Just get in the habit of things. And this was something that I had to redo when we moved because things were different.
This is the icon for focus mode. If you haven't used this yet, you should start. I have a little bit of ADHD, not a really bad case, but a little bit. And I find that when I turn focus on to not be distracted by other things, it helps me focus. It's on our phones, it's on our computers, and it works really well. So if you're not playing with this yet, I highly recommend it.
And I love the thing where you can flip it on your, on your computer or your phone, and it's associated with your Apple account. And so it flips it on all your devices. So, if I do it on my computer, my phone, it's not going to ring.
And it's not an extra app. It's built right in. It's free. It's there to use, and it works really well.
Also useful when you're doing presentations.
Correct.
So you don't get all kinds of
Although
weird...
No, I don't think I turned it on. Maybe I did. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go look. Right. This is Flow. I've been playing around with this. This is a Pomodoro timer. It's an app in the App Store. There's a free version, and then you can pay for there's like an in-thing charge, but I just use the free version. So Pomodoro is it's a scheduling timer technique, and it's 20 to 25 minutes where this is your focus time. Well, if you're like me, sometimes you'll start to work on a project, and then you're like, have 2 hours really gone by? Holy cow. So the Pomodoro timer purposely breaks your focus into 20 to 25 minute periods. And this is a little timer that keeps track of that for you. It's called Flow. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, and there's other things, there's other tools. I've been trying to find my approach in my new role. So I've been playing with things like Notion. I've also tried the pomofocus.io. But again, it's super important to leverage both put yourself on do not disturb. Don't listen to those Teams or Slack pings unless your boss calls you maybe, or something like that. And just focus on your one project. And then after that 25 minutes, take a break. It can be just get up, go for a little walk around the desk, go to the bathroom, get something to drink. And you'll find, if you get into this habit of doing this, you'll find yourself being more productive and more focused. That's the point of it. Because if you're like me, I'm probably also a little neurodivergent. It's very easy to get bored working on something and your mind starts to drift. So this helps with that because it's just 25 minutes. And if you struggle getting into Pomodoro, shorten the timer. Make it 15 minutes or 10 minutes.
Or you can extend it. I mean,
Right.
I don't recommend going into an hour, but
Right.
make it 40, right? Whatever
Right.
works for you. This is Apple's Freeform. This is a mind mapping application. We used to use a program called OmniGraffle, and then there was Draw.io and a few others in the web. This is free now. It's built into the operating system. And I've actually been using this for documentation because I'm a visual thinker, so I'm a graphical thinker. So I like to have graphics and icons to help build my charts and build my workflows. A list of text doesn't work for me. So I need to have arrows and symbols. And so I've been using this for documentation for myself. Keep a journal. Remember we talked earlier about CYA and taking notes? Use a journal for that. Also use a journal just to help with your own mental health. I've been journaling recently, and I'm finding that I'm happier and more content because I'm taking all of those neurotic thoughts and I'm putting down on paper or screen, and then I don't think about them anymore. And so my journal has become like my little private therapist.
Yeah, and I recommend when you're doing journaling that you segregate it between work, because you can journal for work things. I have to do these things. Oh, I forgot I have this deadline on this project. But then personal, like, oh, I have to go, file this expense report after PSU or whatever, or remember to pay the plumber or whatever, So keep that journal, because it's just another way to kind of back up keep those things. I feel peace once something is on a list. I'm very much a list maker. When something is on a list, my stress level worrying about getting that done decreases because I know it's on the list. So I will look at that list and say, oh, that's right, I've got to take care of this. And then, the wake up at 3 a.m., oh crap, I forgot to do this,
So like it or not, we all have managers. We all have performance reviews, most of us anyway. We're going to show a video here that will teach you. The author says this is how to outsmart 90% of the people, but listen to his six tips about and then reflect on how that can help you with your performance review that you may have coming up.
Do we have audio?
Oh, where's my audio?
Most people will never figure this out. They'll go through life thinking being smart means remembering facts, quoting books, or getting straight A's. But deep down, you know something's off, because you've seen people with degrees make dumb decisions. You've seen people with high IQs crumble under pressure. And you've wondered, if they're so smart, why do they keep messing up? Here's the truth. Being smart isn't about knowing more. It's about seeing differently, thinking in a way most people never even consider. And today you're going to learn how. These 5 mental shifts don't just make you smarter. They make you dangerously effective. The kind of person who walks into a room and changes the whole temperature. No ego, no bragging, just calm, quiet power. Let's begin. 1. Don't argue to win, ask to understand. Most people argue like they're in a courtroom trying to win, prove, dominate. Smart people, they don't play that game. They don't need to win, they want to understand. They ask, what makes you feel that way? What result are you actually hoping for? Have you considered this other angle? They stay calm, they stay curious. And because they're not attacking, people open up. And when people open up, the truth shows itself. That's the trick. You don't need to defeat people. You need to understand them. That's how real minds are changed. And that's what smart people actually do. 2, don't obsess over the moment. Zoom out and see the system. Most people treat failure like a full stop. They mess up a presentation and spiral. They get rejected and shut down. They bomb a workout and think, I suck. But smart people, they don't take it personally. They don't even call it failure. They call it data. They ask, what led to this? What pattern got here? What can I tweak and test again? They treat life like a system, not a soap opera. Zoom out far enough and nothing is final. Everything is just feedback. That's how smart people grow. They learn faster because they don't waste time sulking. They're too busy tweaking the system. 3, filter everything through one simple question. Is this in my control? Most people stress over things they can't do anything about. Traffic, gossip, someone's opinion, the news. And the more they try to control the uncontrollable, the more they burn out. Smart people, they don't waste energy like that. They ask, can I control this? If yes, take action. If no, let it go. They don't spiral. They slice through the noise. That calm energy you see in high performers, it comes from ruthless focus. And that focus comes from control not over the world, but over themselves. 4, get comfortable with silence. Ever noticed how uncomfortable people get in silence? They rush to fill it with jokes, arguments, noise, anything. Smart people? They own the silence. They listen more than they speak. They let the moment breathe. They don't interrupt, they watch. Why? Because the person who talks the least often knows the most. The less reactive you are, the more powerful you become. Silence is strength. It makes people lean in. It reveals things loud people miss. And most of all, it keeps you in control. 5. Don't react. Observe. Someone says something rude. Most people snap. Life throws a curveball. Most people panic. Smart people, they pause, they breathe, they watch, they calculate. And that tiny pause, that moment of observation, it gives them leverage, insight, clarity. Reacting is easy. Observing is power. Because when you pause, you see what others don't. You become the calm one in chaos. And that makes you unforgettable. Final thoughts. You don't need a PhD. You don't need to talk the loudest. You don't even need to be the fastest learner in the room. You just need to shift how you think. Ask instead of argue. Zoom out instead of panic. Focus only on what you can control. Embrace the silence. Observe before you react. That's the real flex. Most people won't do this. They'll keep rushing, overreacting, and draining their own power. But if you start building these mental habits now, you won't just feel smarter. You'll be smarter, calmer, sharper, unshakable.
For those of you watching the video later on, if this video somehow gets snagged by a copyright law or a copyright whatever, and it doesn't show up in our presentation, this QR code will take you to the URL to watch that video. It worked! All right. So we were talking about, I said this is the video as the lead into performance management. We are all going to have a review at some point. You'll have a manager, a company reviewing your work. Things you can do to improve your performance review or try to get a raise or whatever your goal is. Actually reach out, be active about this, and solicit feedback. Now, I'm fortunate. I work for a very large company, and we have a system. It was actually created by SAP. We have a system that they call continuous feedback. And I use it all the time to solicit feedback about my performance as I interact with people in the company. And I now have, as a result, over the past couple of years, I've got like 100 different reviews from people saying, Damien's doing a fantastic job. He solved my problem. I take all of that and I share it with my manager during performance reviews. If you don't have a system like that, you can create your own. Remember that journaling we talked about? Record some of the positive feedback you've received in that journal.
Remember when we had brought up the example of somebody asking you to do something that wasn't in your scope, and if you did it, and having them not only you communicate with your boss, but having the person who made that request communicate with your boss? Document these things, and don't just sit there, like the day before or the day of your review trying to rack your brain at all the things you did. Have a document that is ongoing, that is things that I have done and where I've helped out and projects that I've completed and feedback that I've got. If your organization has a 360 review where your peers review with you, ask them to provide a 360 for you if you've done something for someone, because this is important.
When I have a new IT worker starting around me, I make it a point to show them the continuous feedback system. And for sometimes they're like, whoa, I didn't even know that was there. And so I'm sharing my wisdom with the younger generation, helping them get a leg up. And then that also then reflects positively on me during my performance review, because I'm going to have a group of people around me that are thankful for the mentorship I've been able to give them as I continue to progress in my career.
And speaking of metrics, in those one-on-ones with your boss, make sure that you understand and that you are in alignment with your boss what metrics will be used to evaluate you, and that those metrics don't change. If you have good communication with your boss and you get to your annual review and you've documented all the things you've done and your metrics are clear and understood on both sides, the review should be no surprise. I've unfortunately been on the other side of that situation where, I got some feedback that said, I know you do a lot of things, but we're looking at tickets created and you don't do enough tickets. So, okay, I'll make a ticket for everything. Somebody asked me for help. I point them documentation. I'm making a ticket. So I went through and my one-on-one with my boss, he had a sabbatical Came back, and I said, how am I doing? He's like, you're doing great. You've got as many or more tickets than anybody else on the team. Great, okay. So I come into my annual review, and I got absolutely trashed. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, you didn't do enough. You did a lot of break-fix tickets, but you didn't complete enough project tickets. And I'm like, you never brought that up to me. You've changed the rules. This is a surprise. This is a you problem, not a me problem. I didn't say that, but I'm thinking that. So don't be that situation.
Remember we were just talking about focus mode and everything? My wife's trying to call me right now. And I'm like, I'm presenting. It's Murphy's Law, right? It never fails.
And to reiterate, keep that journal of wins and successes and things that you've accomplished, and know who has provided 360 feedback.
Back to journaling. I keep circling back to journaling, right? That self-evaluation is important because then you can take some of those things that you've done in your self-evaluation and then be more confident as you tell your boss, here's why I deserve a raise, or here's why I deserve to stay employed. Do you want to talk about stack ranking?
Yeah, so if you're unfortunate enough, there's a concept of something called stack ranking. And this was developed by Jack Welch at GE. And the idea behind it is that any team of people, you've got one or two people who are like the absolute high performers. And then, you've got one or two people who are sort of the underperformers, the people who are not performing to their ability. And then everybody else is sort of in the middle. And so organizations love to stack rank. This is something that, again, GE did, Microsoft used to do it, Amazon did it, and so on. I personally don't think it's a great tool because if you're particularly careful about hiring, I question whether you actually have people who are underperforming. But yet the metrics, the system insists you have to designate somebody as being on that low end of the pole and push them to improve. And if they don't improve, then you replace them. And it's only the top performers who get promotions and significant raises, and everybody else gets 1 or 2% in the middle. It's not great because I like to collaborate with my teammates, not compete with them. So a lot of companies have moved away from it, but some companies are still hanging on to it.
If you don't know what you're being evaluated on, if you don't know what those metrics are, ask. That's a management task. Actually, hey, what am I being evaluated on? Oh, tickets? Okay, fine. Project completion or project progress? Okay. If you don't know, find out. If the manager doesn't know, well, then that's a different problem. Okay. Employment is transactional. They are paying you to get work done. You're receiving a salary to complete that work. Try not to take your work home. I know it's tough. I was under that. I did that for years and years and years and years. I would take work home. Now, I feel very fortunate now that I work for a company where the culture of the company is 9 to 5. I'm not expected at all to work after 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. I never get text messages on my work phone at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or 2 a.m. from somebody in Shanghai because the company culture doesn't allow it.
And I am now in that same situation where I don't have that. But before, I was in the other situation where I was the one person who owned everything. So that everybody came to me, didn't matter what time of day, whatever. And, I was working 12 hours a day between at home and in the office. And particularly after my wife lost her job last summer, it became problematic because I was traveling for work and I was working 60 hours a week. And even when I was home, I would sometimes be working. And that was starting to cause problems in my relationship because I was not present. So, when you have, it gets into when it's time to move on, which I did a MacAdmin's podcast episode on that. That's one of the reasons that led me to change career or change jobs, change positions, change employers.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that my job's not stressful. I'm very stressed, but I'm not stressed from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock the next morning. I'm able to go home, enjoy my family, enjoy my kids, enjoy my hobbies. This goes back to a little bit to matrix, back to the metrics. If you haven't done this, try. build a responsibilities matrix. Actually lay out, and I used a grid, lay out a matrix of what your job responsibilities are. Because it can help you then define what you're being evaluated on, and it also help you define how you determine the priority of which task you should work on.
And if you're part of a team, that's also important to have that documented and maybe available so other people can see, because it's like, okay, so who's the PKI, lead, primary, and who's the backup on your team? Because you're going to have that defined if you've got a team of more than like 2 or 3 people. Just so that, and then when somebody reaches out to you, it's like, okay, look at the matrix. So-and-so is the primary and so-and-so is the secondary, so talk to them or I'll ping them for you.
One of the very first things I did moving from education to enterprise, I sat down for about a month at Corning and I just reached out to people and said, who's responsible for networking? Who's responsible for the proxy? Who's responsible for communications? And I built a list of, oh, that's Joe, or that's Sally, or that. And then I referred back to that list over and over and over again, because I'm like, oh, who was that doing the certificates for the company? Oh, yeah, it was Brett. And if I hadn't done that outreach, it would have made my transition a lot harder. It also gave me visibility in this new company I was working for, so that then those groups would go, oh, yeah, now there's actually somebody who's able to do the Mac work.
Yeah.
And they remember that.
I call this the lay of the land. I like to try to find the lay of the land. And as I mentioned earlier, when I joined SpaceX and a month later, COVID happened, that was particularly frustrating because I literally didn't know who to talk to about things. And and they were not around, and we didn't have collaboration tools like Teams or Slack that we could use to message. It was all email or texting if you happen to have the person's phone number, which I felt kind of bad doing. But if you were stuck, it's like, who do I talk to about this? And I became exceptionally good at it to the point where other people would come to me and say, hey, we got a problem with this. Who do we talk to? Oh, talk to the Linux team, or talk to the firewall team, talk to this person. And I would actually maybe even do a soft introduction, in a Teams message. Hey, so-and-so is having a problem with this. It seems like it's a firewall rule. Can you help them? And then I just kind of distance myself out of the conversation.
Again, we've talked about a lot of stress in work, a lot of stress at home. It's really important to have a work-life balance. We're going to show you another video, again, with lots of wisdom about maintaining that balance.
Burnout isn't just exhaustion. It's that feeling where your brain is screaming, enough, but life keeps asking for more. I hit that wall hard, emails piling up, deadlines I couldn't keep, days that felt like one long gray blur. It wasn't just tiredness. It was like my soul was on strike. And if you're feeling that way too, you're not alone. Burnout is skyrocketing. And it's not just about work. It's about life feeling like it's closing in on you. But before I hit total meltdown mode, I started doing these 6 small things. They didn't just help me recover, they gave me back my energy, my focus, and honestly, my sanity. Stick around, because the 5th habit is the one that most people miss. And it's the reason so many of us stay stuck in burnout mode for way too long. Let's get into it. Habit 1, establishing clear boundaries. I used to think boundaries were selfish. Like, if someone asked for my time, my energy, my attention, I had to give it. Otherwise, I'd feel guilty or rude. But here's the truth. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're survival. Here's what I started doing. Time blocks. I set clear work hours and stick to them. No emails after 7 p.m., no work on Sundays, period. Physical spaces. I designated one corner of my room as the work zone. Once I leave that space, work is over. Digital boundaries, notifications, office social media, timed. Because constant access means constant stress. And the biggest game changer, learning to say no without guilt. Because every time you say yes to something you don't want to do, you're saying no to yourself. Habit 2, regular mental recharge practices. You ever get to the end of a rest day and still feel completely drained? That was me. Because scrolling Instagram and binge watching shows isn't real rest. So here's what I started doing instead: micro breaks. Throughout the day, every hour, I take 5 minutes to reset. Could be breathing, stretching, staring out the window, just 5 minutes to pause. Weekly downtime. One day a week, I go off-grid for a couple of hours. No screens, just a walk, a book, or a coffee shop. Personalized calm rituals. I started ending my day with 20 minutes of intentional calm. Reading, a warm shower, or playing chill music. It's not about what you do, it's about how it makes you feel. Habit 3, physical well-being foundation. Here's the thing about burnout. You can't think your way out of it. If your body is screaming for sleep and nutrition, no amount of positive thinking will fix it. So, I started focusing on 3 basic things. Sleep as a non-negotiable. I made a consistent sleep schedule my top priority. Same time every night. No screens 1 hour before bed. This one habit did more for my burnout than any app, book, or podcast. Movement that feels good, not punishment workouts. Just moving for 20 minutes a day, a walk, stretching, or dancing in my living room. The goal wasn't fitness, it was getting my blood flowing. Food as fuel, not just comfort. Instead of grabbing whatever was easiest, I started focusing on foods that sustain energy. Protein, veggies, and water first. Then the snacks. Because burnout isn't just emotional, it's physiological. Habit 4, transforming my relationship with productivity. I was burning out because I was measuring my worth by output. If I didn't check off every box on my to-do list, I felt like a failure. But here's the truth. Productivity isn't about doing more. It's about doing what matters. Here's how I shifted. Value-based goals. Instead of asking, what can I get done today? I started asking, what actually matters today? 3 essential tasks. That's it. Redefining success. It wasn't about the number of hours I worked. It was about the quality of what I produced and how it aligned with my values. Building in recovery time. Every 90 minutes, I'd step away. No exceptions. Because burnout happens when you're constantly in output mode without input mode. Habit 5, community and connection. Here's the part that most people miss. Burnout isolates you. You feel alone, like no one gets it. So you shut down. You ghost people, you pull back. But the real solution? Connection. Vulnerability with trusted people. I started opening up to 3 people I trust. Not everyone needs to know my struggles, but a few people do. And just saying it out loud lightens the load. Asking for help before it's too late. This was hard for me, but burnout is like a car engine overheating. If you wait too long to pull over, the damage is worse. Asking for help doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise. Creating support systems. A weekly check-in call with a friend. A text chain with people who get it. A standing coffee date. Something to anchor me back to reality. Habit 6, meaning-making practices. Burnout isn't just about doing too much. It's about doing too much that feels meaningless. So I started carving out time for meaning-making moments. Daily reflection on purpose. At the end of the day, I'd write down one thing I did that felt aligned with my values. Even if it was something small, like saying no to a meeting that didn't matter. Gratitude practice. Burnout makes everything feel heavy, but focusing on small moments of joy, a good cup of coffee, a funny text, a sunset, rewires your brain to look for the good. Finding micro joys, tiny moments of play, wonder, or rest. A favorite song, a hot shower, a 5-minute doodle. Because meaning isn't just in the big stuff, it's in the tiny moments you actually notice. Conclusion. Here's the thing. No single habit is going to fix burnout. But when you stack them together, they become a system. A system that protects your mind, your body, and your soul. Start small. Maybe just one habit this week. Set a boundary. Take a 5-minute walk. Call a friend. Write down one thing that matters. Because the opposite of burnout isn't just rest, it's reconnection with yourself.
Again, if the video gets snipped out or the audio gets muted because of YouTube privacy or copyright, here's the URL. QR code will take you there. All right, so what do you do all about this? How do you maintain that work-life balance? You got lots of great tips from the video. That's why we included it. We'll talk about a few things that Robert and I have done to keep that work-life balance level. Use your PTO. Don't feel guilty about taking your paid time off. It's part of your contract. Use it. I am particularly guilty of not doing this. This is my vacation right now, which is kind of pathetic, but this is my vacation right now. But you know what, though? I'm reconnecting with really great friends here. That's why I come to summer camp, this nerd summer camp every year, because I get to reconnect with those friends, and I get to share, and I have been all week, share my frustrations at work. So this is a little bit therapy for me and a little bit of vacation.
Yeah, I was guilty of that too. I think I had 5 weeks of vacation that I got paid out for when I left after 5 years. I remember one year I took 2 days off the entire year because I was so busy. And I think something else that video didn't mention that I did want to bring up is you don't beat yourself up. You know, I think sometimes managers in particular expect your output or cadence or work to be like this. In reality, it's like this because of all those outside factors. You're tired, you didn't sleep well, you're not feeling good, you've got some external stressor. So don't beat yourself up about it. But be certain to keep your boss in the loop. I warned my new boss when I started this job. I said, it's going to take me probably 3 to 6 months to come up to speed. Not because I'm a slow learner or I don't want to, but because I'm burned out. I have to pack up my entire household and move. I have to buy a house and then move again and then get situated. And that's just going to take some time. And, you know, he was totally okay with it. And, you know, I've been doing that temperature check all the time. Am I doing okay? Am I doing okay? Yeah, you're doing great. So, you know, the clear communication with your boss is helpful in that.
Find a hobby outside of work that brings you joy. I spend an inordinate amount of time as a Boy Scout volunteer, as a scoutmaster for my troop. And I work with teenagers, teaching them life-saving skills and CPR and how to use an AED machine and how to bandage a wound, how to do first aid emergency care. And I get a huge amount of validation from that. Like, it's one of the most validating things I've ever done. And I will keep doing it because I believe in the mission of scouting, raising young people to be the next generation of leaders.
And do you want to mention the story about when your wife was diagnosed with cancer, the garden story?
Oh, yeah, of course. So my wife did pass 11 years ago, and I was left with a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old. And I do not have a green thumb. I don't. But I happened to be living in a house that was on 2 acres of land in New Jersey, which is unheard of. And I had lots of land. And I'm like, well, I'm going to build a garden. So I built a garden about the size of this room. And I grew more tomatoes and zucchini and cucumbers than I could possibly eat. But I would go out after work every day and garden. And that was therapeutic for me. It really was therapy for me to help me kind of come to terms with the loss of my wife. I don't garden anymore, but at that time, for about 5 years, that was my main hobby.
Yeah, and I went through something similar. You know, I'm also not a green thumb. I've never met a plant I couldn't kill. But I discovered that simple act of, like, when I was working from home during COVID and my wife had a broken leg and I was taking care of her and our dogs, that when I needed a break, I would, like, set a timer 15 minutes. I'd go out in the front yard and just pull weeds or trim the bushes and stuff around the walls of the property. And it was amazing to me how much better it felt to kind of like do a physical activity that wasn't necessarily exercise, but work with my hands, but let my brain sort of rest.
You know, related is exercise, right? I know it's cliche, but exercise. Like the guy in the video said, it doesn't have to be like strenuous, punishing workout. It can just be going for a walk. It can be I spend about 20 to 30 minutes on a rowing machine, watching a television show. it just gets that body moving and it helps remove some of the stress from your life.
I find personally that if I have, some kind of thing, it can just be a walk or it can be cardio or whatever, that I am much more focused and better, I have more energy and I have more focus. I'm a morning workout person, which of course for my current job sucks because I start at 5 a.m. And by the time I'm done with my daily onslaught of meetings, it's 9, 10 a.m. And then when you live in Arizona, it's now 100 degrees and you don't want to go outside until about 8 o'clock at night.
So the video talked about this too, and I would argue that if you take nothing away from this presentation, except for one thing, that one thing should be this tip right here. If you are not blocking your calendar to prioritize your work during the day, start doing that. Actually block it out. 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, I am not available for communication with anybody. Mark out of office if you have to. And then that's your focus time to do whatever engineering project you're working on or whatever task you have. Block the time out with your family. Put that in your calendar too. If I have something that has to happen during the day, during work hours, I mark myself out of office, I go do that thing with my family, and then I come back to work. The video talked about this too. Develop sleep habits, healthy sleep habits. For many, 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 many years, I was a stay up until 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning guy. And then something happened about the time my wife died, actually. And now I can't sleep past dawn. Sun comes up and I'm up. But it meant that I had to completely shift my sleeping habits. And I found that I'm healthier now than I was then. And it was that misalignment of my sleep habits and my work and my day life that was causing problems, and I didn't realize it. And now I'm up early and to bed early. And I know that makes me sound like an old man, but maybe I am an old man.
I have that 5 a.m. start because I collaborate with colleagues in Europe where it's already noon or 1 p.m. So I need, if I started at 7, that reduces my collaboration window to 2 hours a day, and I'd rather have 3 to 4. So, I am very disciplined even on the weekend about going to bed at 9, and trying to be asleep by 10. I've struggled with sleep. Falling asleep's not a problem for me, but staying asleep is. I know here a couple nights I woke up, I think yesterday morning was 3 a.m., this morning was 4 a.m. Yesterday I was up for a couple hours, this morning was only like half an hour, and I was able to get myself back to sleep. So, but, make sure that you find ways, and look at things you can do, like watch your caffeine intake, and so on, and melatonin or other, be careful with sleep supplements and some of especially the prescription ones, but just try to find good habits, keep your bedroom cool, and things like that, and that will really help you with sleep.
So this is a really hard one for me, and probably hard for you. You need to learn to gracefully say no. It's hard because I'm a pleaser. I want to, yeah, sure, I can do it. Sure, I'll fit it in. If you're going to have any kind of sanity at all at your work, you need to be able to gracefully say no. You know what? I'm sorry, I don't have time right now. Maybe so-and-so can handle this.
Yeah, and this is difficult for me because I am a people pleaser, but I like to use this assessment. If it was an emergency for them, and if it's something that didn't take my time, I may say yes. But if it's something that they needed me to do, but it didn't need to be done today, I'd negotiate. Hey, I'm in the middle of something right now. Can I do this for you later? Sure, that's fine. Okay. And I'm also I take that approach when I reach out to the people. I just literally this morning, somebody asked for something to be done. I'd be like, hey, I need a copy of this. I'm not going to work on this till Monday, so take your time. If you can get it to me so I have it by Monday morning my time, that'd be great. So.
And then this was also in the video. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Also very hard for me to do, but over the years I've gotten better at it. Asking for help doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means you're overworked or overwhelmed. Don't be afraid. Talk to you, and this is where managers come in as well. Talk to your manager and say, look, I'm completely overwhelmed. Maybe you can even say, look, I got this other thing going on at home or outside of work, and it might be affecting my work. Ask for help. I can't say you'll always get it, but you should be able to get help. I'll let you talk about these.
All right. There's a number of different, I didn't find a super good URL for this, but there's a number of different websites that have information about the Wheel of Happiness. And this is kind of a self-evaluation tool that will help you focus on the areas of your life you need to change. And this is not the Buddhist Wheel of Happiness, by the way, I'll point out, where you basically look at these various areas of your life and you identify your satisfaction level. I'm trying to remember the exact terminology here. But, a 1 to 10 scale. So you could probably Google for Wheel of Happiness quiz or map. And again, once you have that, it can generate, what items you have to work on. And, it's similar. It's like, this is like an example analysis of it, how satisfied you are with life. And clearly you can see that well-being is a concern here. They're not happy or not optimistic, which can be hard to do these in the world today. But there's also the concept of ikigai, which we didn't cover. I mentioned this in my MacAdmin's podcast. It's like when you find yourself in that, the overlapping circles of life, things that I can do, things that I am good at, things I can be paid for, things that I'm happy doing, and you get that center collection, that's when that's when you are happiest, and that's when you have flow in your life, when you feel you have purpose.
All right, it happens. Sometimes you get fired, sometimes you get laid off, right? What do you do? Number one, Robert already said it. You need to have some type of emergency fund so that you're not completely desperate when that happens. You need to reject imposter syndrome. Just because you were laid off does not mean that you're a failure. Sometimes it happens, right? A reduction of force, it happens. It has nothing to do with your job or your performance, usually. Use your network. There are actually a number of people at this conference who are unemployed, and they're using this conference to network with others looking for job opportunities. I would argue that this is probably the way to find a job in this current job market, is through who you know. So use your network. Pam Lefkowitz had a fantastic workshop on Tuesday on all of the things you can do in this particularly horrible job market to market yourself as employable. I would reach out to her, always DNS on MacAdmin Slack. I'm sure she's happy to share the resources from that workshop with you. Examples like tailor your resume. Make sure your resume matches what the job is you're applying for, otherwise it probably won't get through the automated HR system. Have an emergency fund. Budget. Related to have an emergency fund. Have a budget. If you're not budgeting, start. If you're not talking to a financial advisor, start talking to a financial advisor. Find a fiduciary, which is somebody who's not beholden to his own profit. He or she, a fiduciary is legally responsible or legally bound to offer you advice that benefits you, not him or her or his company, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I have a few more. Can you back up a second?
Sorry.
I wanted a few things. Tailoring on your resume. Always have your resume up to date. Always have your resume on iCloud or Dropbox or OneDrive. Personally, not corporate-wise. Keep that stuff off your corporate computer, especially in the age of DLP software when they can see what files you're editing. Always keep in the back of your mind. If I sign into work tomorrow and I got a termination notice or my login didn't work and my manager called me and told me I was let go, I have a list of 3 people that I would notify immediately. I know what companies I would target to look to be hired. I would know how I would communicate. I would be networking, posting I'm open to work on LinkedIn, that sort of thing. I was actually thinking that the 6 major jobs I've had in my professional career, none of them are ones that I blind applied to. They were all ones that somebody either recommended me for or I knew somebody that worked in the organization. So that's really, really important. Hallway track here is helpful for that. And also keep in mind, what if this is what my wife is going through right now? What if I need to pivot what I'm doing in my career? The skill set that I have doesn't align with jobs that are there. So how can I pivot? What should I move to that will give me some, give me a career or a purpose?
So that's the close of our presentation. It's Q&A time. Some of you old timers might recognize a few of those little Easter eggs here on on the slide. I love it because it's trash. It's my favorite. Oscar the Grouch popping out of the trash can. It's Q&A time. We'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, questions.
Could you wind the slide back to show the QR code for the burnout video? It was just about too short for us to catch it.
Oops.
Most people,
This one?
No, the burnout one, the next one.
burnout isn't.
Yeah, that one.
Got
Thank
it.
you very much. That was it.
Safety throwing. Just sort of two comments. If you're working for a larger company, odds are you've got some sort of wellness group, referral groups. Actually, they'll refer you in-house, and a lot of them, they don't charge you for the first few appointments. It's also kind of a way to maybe find someone that's a good fit, because you may get to a counselor and it's just not a good fit. The second one, and my daughter is fine with me outing her on this. My youngest daughter has schizophrenia. And sharing some of her issues with friends all of a sudden brings stuff out in the open that they're like, well, I've been dealing with this, but I didn't say anything because I didn't think anybody else was having any problem. So a lot of times, if you're comfortable outing yourself with whatever you're going through, someone else is realizing, oh, it's not just me. And you may actually encourage someone to get some help that they've been avoiding getting. So I'll lay that out there.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Yeah, we don't have to throw this.
Go too far. Yeah, early on, you mentioned, and I think it's, a great call out, but I think it's natural for us to, when we feel like we're dealing with difficult situations, we talk about, CYA, you're documenting everything, you're making sure everything's going through email channels, right? So you could pull it up. You do all that. Have you had an experience where you had to utilize such information, and how does that come across when you are sitting down saying, cool, I've just kind of been keeping tally on a terrible situation? What does that look like if you've had that experience to actually utilize all this information to kind of out this situation that you've been documenting for a long time? And how does that come across?
Well, first of all, the number one
management?
advice I'm going to give you that is be careful with your tone on it. That you don't want to say, well, that I told him that this was going to be a problem and he didn't listen to me. Don't do that. Just say that okay, this concern. I had a concern. I expressed it to him, and he proceeded to and he received the email. We discussed it. He decided to go ahead. So, I brought this up as a potential outcome, and we decided to press forward, and it didn't work. And then I helped come up with a plan to remediate whatever it was that broke. So you just got to be more factual on it. But yes, definitely make sure you have that trail, that audit trail.
Have any of you ever read police reports? Like a detective's report on a situation or a crime?
Yeah, where it's
So
factual.
they are purposely, and they're trained this way, they're intentionally written to be completely neutral and like a passive voice. And so I've taken that technique, and I got this when I was working at a school, when I'd have to write up reports about students misbehaving. I'd write them in that manner because it removes my emotion from it. It removes any accusations or biases, because it's all just facts. And so you might consider, it's up to you, you might consider writing your CYA documentation in that tone. Factual, no opinions, no biases.
Yeah. Don't say, I told you.
Right. Yeah. Okay, we've got about 30 seconds left. Time for one more.
Okay, quick. On the topic of imposter syndrome and asking for help, something that I kind of take to heart. Two things, actually. One, remember all the times that somebody else asked you for help, because that's what we do. And two, just because you're not good at everything doesn't mean you're not good at your job, because nobody is good at everything. Your job is your job, and you are probably great at it because people come and ask you for help. Just because you don't know how to format an Excel document so that it's actually readable or whatever you have stumbled across. You've never used Excel before, you're not in accounting, ask for help and don't feel bad about it because they're going to turn around and ask you for help with their Mac tomorrow.
So that is excellent comment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect close. Thank you, everybody, for coming to our presentation.